Hi, everybody. Today I would like to talk about the topic of relationships. It is an area of my life that I have struggled with, and yet it's also an area of my life that has taught me the most when it comes to my spiritual path and seeking. Specifically, what I would like to talk about is the topic of toxic relationships. Love, in its truest sense, is freedom. It is a force that encompasses and embraces all that we are and all of life. Within relationships, love is the ability to have unconditional acceptance for another without judgment. Sounds hard, doesn't it? Often what we do is confuse attachment for love. Attachments keep us bound in illusions. Attachments make us look for permanence in what can never be permanent, which is the material world. Everything in the material world is subject to the law of birth and death. So if we look for permanence in that world, obviously we will suffer. This is what the ancient sages were trying to teach us. And yet, in our modern world, what we will find are relationships in which it's very prevalent, where we look for stability and permanence within another, rather than connecting to the eternal essence that is within us, which is our spirit, our soul. Toxic relationships are created out of these attachments, which in turn are created out of the illusion that we're separate from God, that we're separate from Source. When we can't feel our connection to the divine, we look outside ourselves to fill up that void of feeling unloved. So we project onto others this need for love and understanding. If you look carefully, you will find that in toxic relationships, the people involved don't even like each other, much less love each other. The Kabbalah calls the ego as the Nachash, the snake, which is described as an internal ardor, a centralized fire agitated by a violent movement seeking to extend itself. This is the aspect of our being which brings about our suffering, pain, and anguish. Notice how it is said that the Nachash is always seeking to extend itself, which means that as long as we're identified to this part of our being, to this aspect of our being, we will forever seek fulfillment outside of ourselves. Because the Nachash can only extend itself as long as it can feed on our pain and suffering. And toxic relationships are food for the Nachash. My last relationship was one of the most painful ones that I've ever been in, and yet I learned so much from it. I am very grateful for it because it brought to light a pattern of relationships that I had been engaging in for pretty much my entire adult life. Usually within toxic relationships, there's going to be some kind of pattern of codependency or power struggle or imbalance of power. My pattern was one where I wanted to do all the work to push the relationship forward while simultaneously engaging in self-destructive behavior that pushed the other person away. You see, no one wants to be responsible and no one can be responsible for the happiness of another. So if we're expecting that from our partners, we're setting ourselves as well as the relationship up for failure. If you're stuck in a toxic relationship, the most important question that you have to ask yourself is, why do you want to be with somebody who doesn't make you happy? Love is not misery or drama. It is not having to convince somebody to be with you or to commit to you or to demand that they fulfill the void that you feel within yourself. All these things are born out of fear, not love. If you stop looking at your partner as your source of happiness, you will come to realize that all they're doing is mirroring the internal vibration and the internal dialogue you have about yourself and love. This might be a really hard mirror to look at. I know it was not easy or pleasant for me to do so, but when I did, what I saw was poor self-confidence. I saw victimhood and I saw selfishness. And I also realized that if I was being with somebody like this, it meant that I had a pretty twisted definition of what love was. For me, love had equated pain, which is something that a lot of people who've been through trauma can relate to. Most importantly, I realized that while I was blaming him for being the source of my unhappiness, I was the only one who could create a change in this situation. So when you take your power back, you will feel your whole life shift. You will feel your whole world shift. You will see it. You will see the results. At the core of it, unhealthy relationships come from the illusion of separation that we have from God. When we cannot feel our connection to the spiritual essence that creates all of life and all of the universe, we feel abandoned. We feel incomplete. We feel unloved. And this causes us to look for that love outside of ourselves. And relationships in which we make somebody special is a result of egoic identification, where we make one person so special that they're the only ones who can fulfill our needs and wants. That is an example of how the nachash, the ego, seeks to extend itself. The ego wants to make us believe that this person will make us feel whole again, will make us feel complete again, will make us feel happy and loved again. And yet our search remains futile. This is because the love that we're searching for, the feeling of completeness that we're searching for, the relief and wholeness that we're searching for cannot be found outside of ourselves, much less within another person. It can only be found by deepening our connection to our deep and true selves, and by realizing that we are one with God, that we are one with Source. And the deeper this connection gets, the more we realize the truth about ourselves. There is a key that can help us get to this truth, and this key is called forgiveness and compassion. This is the key that can help us rise above our egos and let go of our past. The key of forgiveness and compassion is something that we must experience first within ourselves, for ourselves. When we start to wake up to the illusions that we've created out of our egoic confusion, it can be a wake-up call unlike any other. And at first, it might be quite painful to experience. So, when you start to look at the truth behind the special relationships in your life, which are in fact toxic, you will learn much about your inner darkness or your inner nachash. And the nachash will put up a fight. Don't fight with your ego. Rather let the light of your awareness wash away the illusions as you take the reins to create and build a new you. Allow yourself to be compassionate towards the mistakes of your past. Forgive yourself for hurtful words and actions towards others in the past. Take responsibility, but love unconditionally. That is the way to feeling and deepening your connection to the divine. And once you feel that connection, you will be able to apply the key of forgiveness and compassion towards others who have wronged you. You will be able to forgive that special someone who may have left you and broken your heart into tiny little pieces. You will realize that they were just as caught up in the illusion and confusion as you were. Most importantly, releasing yourself from your past will free you up to live in the present.